Hi, my name is Kara Tharp, and I'm going to be going through my experience with the screening process for the MChat. The MChat is a series of questions that you ask the parents, as well as doing some observations with the student regarding whether that child may or may not qualify for additional testing for autistic spectrum disorder. The child that I was observing or speaking to the parents about, I didn't actually do an actual screening on the child individually. I talked to the parents and went through the process with them. Her name was Lila. She is 3.5 years old, and so I went through the questions and I was asking the parents just like it states in the MChat. So for an example, it says, if you point at something across the room, does Lila look at it? And then the parents would answer me yes or no. Then they would give me some examples of her responses to that. So, and I was also observing this with her. But does she look at the object? Does she then start talking about the object? Does she ask about the object? Does she try to engage her parents or somebody else to then also be looking at the object? Those are all examples of ways that you look to see how the child is engaging with the person speaking, and it's part of the screening process. If the child does not, maybe you're pointing at something and the child does not seem to be aware of what you're pointing at or is not interested in it, that would be an example of something you would want to keep an eye out for. That might be a potential fail in this area. So some examples of failure in that is if they ignore the parent, if they just seem to be looking around the room randomly, not really understanding where the parent is actually pointing, or if the child just looks at the parent's finger instead of actually where the parent is pointing. Some other questions include, does Lila play, pretend, or make believe? And then there would be a series of questions that would fall under that as far as examples of appropriate make-believe. This specific child definitely plays make-believe. She is very interested in Star Wars and therefore plays and does pretend things with Star Wars. Some additional things that parents might look out for is if you ask the child to pretend they're eating pizza, how would they do it? Would they be able to respond to that? If the child does not really know how to make believe or doesn't pretend when playing, that's a sign that maybe there might be something else going on, and that would be actually a failure in this screening as well. There are 20 questions for the MChat, and a lot of them are a question like I've been going through that would be a simple yes or no, and then there would be subset questions underneath it. For example, this one that I'm looking at says, does Lila make unusual finger movements near his or her eyes? So initially the person screening it and also the parents would answer yes or no. Then there would be things that go underneath that. For example, if you said yes, then does she ever look at her hands, move when you're playing peekaboo? If they're moving, if they're kind of like cheating, almost like looking, that would be an example of typical movements around the eyes. That's not unusual. It's very typical for that age. That would be a developmental normality. Some unusual things might be if they're doing this and just kind of looking at their fingers. That's not typical, but that's something that is seen sometimes during these screenings. The flapping of the hands near the face, that's a common trait that is just something that needs to be watched for additional testing. And again, so if you select yes for a certain number of these, then they're considered a pass in that area. If you select no, then it's considered a fail in that question. And like I said, there are 20 questions total. After going through Lila's screening, she passed every area. She's a very typical 3.5-year-old child, developmentally, physically. She's right on target where she needs to be according to the screenings of the MCHAT that I was just practicing giving. My personal takeaway from it, I think it would be very difficult. I personally know the child I was testing, so that helped me a lot. But I could see how it would be a difficult thing for parents to objectively answer some of these questions. And for an observer, I could see how it could easily be difficult for the parents to really give an honest opinion of the matter, because in some of the questions, what might seem normal to the parent, especially if maybe it's their first child or maybe they haven't been around a lot of kids this age, it would be very hard for the parent to know what is typical. Like for that question number, I believe it was 4 that I read about the unusual movements near the eyes. Well, a parent might not think it's that unusual for a small child to be doing that. Maybe they think they're playing. Also, many children might be kind of like gazing around the room, and the parent might not pick up on the fact that they're not really focused on anything. They're just blankly staring almost. And so that might be something that's difficult for a parent to notice initially, but after going through the screening, they might realize, oh, wait a second, yes, my child does do that a lot. That's not a typical behavior, and that might be something to watch and then additionally get checked out. But I thought it was very interesting going through this screening process. I'm excited to learn more about it. Thank you.